Welcome to this explainer. Look, if you're tuning in right now, there's a really high chance you're just running on empty. You are exhausted, you're trying to juggle work, daily life, and a child who honestly seems to be constantly homesick. You might even feel like you're playing flu season roulette, right? Like you're buying tissues in bulk just to keep up with it all. And it is completely draining when your little one catches every single bug, every running nose, and every cough imaginable. Let me tell you, you are absolutely not alone in feeling this heavy fatigue. Having a kid constantly homesick is completely overwhelming. But today we're going to look at the data, we're going to rethink exactly why this happens, and hopefully bring you some much-needed peace of mind.
Because honestly, it all boils down to this fundamental question. Is something wrong with my child, or is this actually normal? This is the exact anxiety-inducing question that every single stressed parent asks themselves when their kid gets sent home sick for, the third time in a single month? When you're staring at a thermometer that reads a fever yet again, it is so easy to spiral. You start wondering if you're doing something wrong, or if your child's health is fundamentally compromised in some way.
Okay, let's dive into this because this is exactly where most parents get completely stuck. You're caught between two really confusing, totally conflicting worlds of advice. On one hand, you hear this traditional view, right, that a healthy child should rarely get sick, and that frequent infections must be a red flag, a sign of weak immunity or poor health that needs to be fixed. But then, on the flip side, you hear from other parents and pediatricians that repeated colds and viral infections are simply a normal part of childhood. It's incredibly frustrating to be caught in the middle of these two viewpoints. So who's actually right here?
To figure that out, let's look at Section 1, Daycare, the training ground.
We actually have to completely shift our perspective away from viewing illness as a failure. The truth is kind of uncomfortable for a lot of parents because it goes completely against our basic intuition. When your child is sick again and again, it literally feels like something is broken. But the reality? For most young kids, frequent viral infections are not only normal, they're entirely expected, especially when they're in group settings. Immune development is a gradual process where the body learns to protect itself through repeated exposure to viruses and bacteria. You see, a child is not born with a fully trained immune system. It's basically a blank slate. They absolutely require real-world exposure to build up their biological defenses. Think of the immune system like a muscle that's never been worked out. It has to encounter these viruses to figure out how to fight them off down the road.
Now, what's really fascinating is understanding where all this heavy lifting actually happens. The daycare environment is basically the ultimate immune training ground. Why? Well, just think about it. Constant close contact, sharing air and space, sharing toys and surfaces, and ultimately, exposure to many mild respiratory viruses. Early schooling facilities are essentially germ-heavy locations by design. Every single child walking into that room is bringing in respiratory viruses. Now, most of these are super mild, but they're easily passed around, making this the primary place where this totally vital immune exposure naturally occurs.
I really want you to let this quote sink in. What looks like a child being sick all the time is often the immune system doing exactly what it is supposed to do, learning. Pediatric sources broadly agree on this. Young children in group settings can, and absolutely will, experience multiple viral respiratory infections every single year. In those early years of exposure, this rapid-fire sickness falls perfectly within normal, healthy childhood development. Your child isn't failing. Their immune system is literally just studying for the tests of the real world.
So, let's transition to the medical reality of these illnesses in Section 2, Viruses versus Antibiotics. What really matters here isn't just how often a kid gets sick, but how their body naturally recovers from those illnesses. And this distinction is absolutely crucial. When you're dealing with viral infections, antibiotics do not help, period. Bacterial infections are different. That is where antibiotics are highly effective. But the vast majority of early childhood infections you're dealing with, they're viral. Because of this, reaching for or heavily relying on antibiotics is an entirely ineffective approach. Antibiotics are designed exclusively to kill bacteria, so using them for a viral cold is basically like trying to put out a fire with a fan. The body just has to handle viral infections on its own.
And this brilliantly illustrates the invisible, entirely natural biological work the body does. Let's walk through it. First, it produces mucus. Then it raises the temperature slightly. Third, it activates the immune response. And finally, it gradually clears the virus. We so often view mucus and a slight fever as the enemy, right? But these are actually the tools the body uses to heal itself. It's a natural process that takes several days, and honestly, it's a huge sign that your child's body is functioning exactly as it should.
Okay, so how can we actively help that process? Let's move to Section 3, Environment over Medication.
This is the really empowering, actionable part of our explainer. Because look, while you can't cure a virus with a pill, you have an immense amount of control over how your child's body navigates the recovery process right at home. And notice the stark difference here. A slower recovery is triggered by a poor home environment. Dry air, overheating, and a lack of fluids, these things actually make the symptoms worse. Contrast that with a faster recovery, which is aided by fresh air, moderate room temperatures, and consistent hydration. An optimal environment literally eases the heavy lifting your child's immune system has to do. If the air is way too dry or the room is totally overheated, the poor body has to fight the environment on top of fighting the virus.
So, what is the real treatment for these uncomplicated viral infections? Fresh air, moderate room temperature, proper humidity, consistent hydration, rest and time. That's the whole shebang. In most straightforward cases, these simple, everyday environmental conditions are significantly more effective than unnecessary over-the-counter medications. Giving the body air, water, and time just allows that natural immune learning process to happen as smoothly as possible.
Which brings us to our final section, Section 4, Adaptation, Not Weakness.
It's time to bring this emotional arc into full relief and completely reframe how you view your frequently sick kid. We really need to stop seeing those running noses as a sign of vulnerability. So the crucial point is this: isolation in early life only delays exposure. It does not create a stronger immune system. Sometimes we think that by keeping our kids away from others, we're protecting them, right? We're building better immunity. But the science shows us that avoiding other children doesn't build a stronger system at all. A child kept in isolation might get sick less often right now, sure, but it's really only kicking the can down the road, delaying the inevitable learning phase until they eventually join a group setting later on.
And here is the deep, deep comfort I want you to take away from this explainer today. As the immune system matures over time, the frequency of illness naturally decreases. This incredibly stressful phase of back-to-back sickness, of calling out of work, of constantly wiping tiny noses, it is temporary. It is actively building a robust foundation for their future. The real problem isn't the illness itself, it's our societal expectation that young children shouldn't get sick this often.
I want to leave you with this really powerful thought. A frequently sick child is not a weak child. It is a child learning how to live in the real world. Your child is adapting. Their body is doing incredible, complex work every single time they catch one of those mild daycare bugs. So, take a deep breath, optimize their environment, keep them hydrated, and please know that you are not failing. You are simply helping them learn how to thrive in the real world. So the next time the school calls, ask yourself, are they really getting sick or are they just leveling up? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer.